Friends, in this episode I plan to talk about online learning. Now, obviously, in the current COVID virus pandemic, every kind of institution has been forced to shift to some degree of online learning in some fashion or the other. So let me make my typical 3 points and first speak about our experience and my personal experience over the past 20 years at DiploFoundation in handling online learning in diplomatic studies. In this time, I have run a little over 100 courses covering about 5-6 major subjects, several of which are repeated each year. Perhaps 1,000 participants have passed through these courses. What have we learned? We have learned first that the biggest barrier to overcome in online learning is to give participants a sense that they are part of a living classroom. That even if they connect with the course through their laptop or their phone, they are in fact members of a small community. Our classes typically consist of 12 to 25 participants. About 70% of them are diplomats, some are senior, some are of middle rank, some are relatively beginners. The other 30% who come from international organizations, NGOs working abroad, people in civil society, people who are interested in the idea of diplomatic studies, they bring an element of freshness into the course. So how do we create a community in such a group? I must also add that our participants come a large block from Latin America and the Caribbean countries, another big block from African countries, a smaller number from Europe, a few from North Africa, and just a few from Asia. But it is international. The way it works is each course typically consists of 8 modules. That is 8 lectures, each of 4,000 to 5,000 words on a protected website, our learning management system. And from that system, we get participants to enter what are called hypertext comments. So each lecture, which has a life of 1 week, is chewed over by the class for 1 week. This leads me to an important conclusion, and that is that in some ways such online learning is perhaps equal to or maybe even superior to classic classroom learning. So with a typical lecture, we have something like 60-80 questions, comments from the class, to which the lecturer responds to 60-70%. And this means that almost every point in that lecture is discussed, debated, and, shall we say, taken to pieces. We also get the class to write seminar papers exactly as in a graduate class. This too is posted on the learning management system, and members of the class, like in a graduate class, go over this and make their comments, but with the difference that this time it is the seminar paper writers who have to defend their paper, who have to explain their paper, so to speak. So this is an intense process. And then, so in a typical course, we will have 4, 5, sometimes even 6 seminar papers. At the end of the week cycle, we have an online session which is through text. So many comments flow in a very fast moving conversation, sometimes almost impossible to read. Now some would say it is hard to have a real learning process through that online chat. But in fact, that online chat also gives an opportunity to the class to clarify doubts, to frame their questions, and again to chew over the ideas. And the beauty of this system is that it becomes part of a permanent record which is accessible to the participants forever. We keep our classroom open to the participants all the time. What else do? We have the usual assignments which are marked. We've now tried to add a tutorial process to this format, and we use Zoom for that purpose. We are learning this. It's an example of constant innovation that you try and carry on. But the key point in this method of ours is that a great deal of learning takes place through the members of the class themselves, who talk to each other, who exchange ideas. And this produces real conversation, real results for the class. Okay, let me come to my second big point. How can foreign ministries use online learning? Well, our method is in fact used by the foreign ministries of a number of countries who send their diplomats to our courses on a regular basis. But if a foreign ministry wants to run an exclusive program of their own, there are pluses and minuses. A plus is that you will have an integrated group of your own, protected, and you can speak far more freely than you can in a classroom where other people are present. But the downside is that sometimes this inhibits discussions. And we've seen this. We have run some courses exclusively for 2 or 3 countries, and we found that people then become reticent in opening themselves up. Now, mind you, if they were members of a fresh intake, new entrants to the service, I think they would be pretty vigorous in expressing their views. But if you talk of people who have had 5, 8, 10 years of work experience, in practice they become a little bit cautious, a little bit careful of what they will say. At the same time, for the foreign ministry, a huge plus is that you can reach out to your globally distributed diplomats rather than bring them back home or to another capital for an on-site course. So online learning makes a great deal of sense for foreign ministries. And many foreign ministries have shifted to this. Canada, the United States, the UK now. These are at least 3 countries that are strong users of their own exclusive online processes. Let me come to my third point, and that is there a downside? Yes, there is. There is a downside in the fact that, apart from what I mentioned a moment back, that the courses will produce in the setting of one single entity's staff, it will produce some inhibitions. There is a way of getting around this if you can blend into the process your local staff. That's a very important point, because local staff today are used far more intensively than before. I've talked about it earlier. So, if you bring local staff into a training program with your full-time regular diplomats, in a sense you're telling your local staff indirectly that you are also valued members of our team. Mind you, I think I've mentioned this earlier, handling local staff, that is the people who are recruited in the country of where the embassy is located, who are now given increased responsibilities in economic promotion, in public diplomacy, in gathering of data, in making connections with local think tanks and universities, in cultural work, and in some elements of political work, gathering information, contacting newspapers and other media entities, etc. What other disadvantages? I can't really think of any other major disadvantage with online learning. It is in fact a great idea whose time has now come. Finally, at the United Nations, there is an entity called a Joint Inspection Unit. It consists of 8 or 9 senior, experienced diplomats and civil servants who examine different elements of actions and activities at the UN system and come up with ideas. And I understand that recently this GIU, the Joint Inspection Unit, has produced a report on distance learning. Now at the UN there is an entity, a fairly small entity called UNITAR, which also organizes its courses which are open to all, covering diplomatic studies, negotiations, multilateral diplomacy, political and economic diplomacy, etc. Much like the kind of courses we do at DiploFoundation. So that report is apparently now going to be made public in the next few months. And I think this will give us some interesting insights. So to sum up, I would say online learning is a good method. At DiploFoundation, we do it rather well. We've been doing it for 20 years and we built up a great deal of domain knowledge and experience. But we also accept that there are other entities like UNITAR, like some universities, etc., which run their programs, with the difference that the universities are more interested in academic studies, while offering these practical, hands-on type of diplomatic, practice-oriented courses, we also offer a master's degree through the accreditation that is given by the University of Malta, and that is another way of enriching the process of learning through the online process. Thank you very much.